I am Billy Porter, and I'm here to talk to you about America's future. This is precisely the time when artists go to work. There is no time for despair, no place for self-pity, no need for silence, no room for fear. We speak, we write, we do language. That is how civilizations heal. Toni Morison. I stand before you today at the intersection of race, queerness, and art. I'm a Black man first, all day, every day, and I live with that reality of what that means in this country. I am also an artist who knows for a fact that we artists have acted as gatekeepers and healers in societies and civilizations since the beginning of time, reaching into the hearts and minds of the people and changing the molecular structure of systemic bias and hatred from within. This is a fact that is no different today. And lastly, but certainly not least, I am a gay man. I bring this up so as to create context. It is not lost on me that as a Black, out, gay, Christian man delivering a speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, I know that 55 years ago, one of the original architects of America's nonviolent civil rights movement was a man by the name of Bayard Rustin. Turns out he was silenced by the movement because he was homosexual. Some of the leaders of the movement felt it wasn't appropriate to have what they labeled a sexual deviant in their midst, so they put him out. Bayard gave his life over to the greater good, to the bigger picture, and bowed out gracefully, leaving his legacy at the feet of those who would deny his humanity so hypocritically. I ain't so grateful. It's time we added one more name to that big six we've come to honor as founders of the movement. I've wondered aloud for at least half my life about what our current state would look like if all people were represented in the fight for equality from the very beginning. We will never know, but the good news is, I'm here now. We are all here now. And I am honored and humbled to stand on the shoulders of my personal hero as I dedicate this momentous moment to the memory and legacy of civil rights leader and long forgotten icon, Bayard Rustin. The Declaration of Independence states, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." I must first turn to the structure of this sentence and the complicated history of its origins and subsequent interpretations. What, in fact, does all men are created equal actually mean? When the very man who wrote these words owned slaves as his pen glided across the parchment paper. Thomas Jefferson owned slaves and mistresses he publicly denied. Jefferson knew slavery was wrong and that he was wrong for profiting from the institution as a whole. Yet the security of his privilege blinded him from seeing opportunities to relinquish the institution of slavery within his lifetime. He assumed the abolition of slavery might be accomplished by the young men of the next generation. They were qualified to bring the American Revolution to its idealistic conclusion because, as he said, these young Virginians have sucked in the principles of liberty as if it were their mother's milk. It seems that we, the living, are left with the burden of the failures of generation after generation, pushing towards America's quest for a more perfect union. And while many of us as a collective have struggled with Sisyphean force for hundreds of years to reach the mountaintop of equality for all people, no shade, we ain't there yet. But there's always hope, and we must never lose it. The late great civil rights icon and hero John Lewis was the first civil rights leader to stand up for LGBTQ plus rights and against the Defense of Marriage Act on the Senate floor. I quote, "I will not turn my back on another human being. I will not oppress my fellow human beings. I fought too hard and too long against discrimination based on race and color to stand up against discrimination based on sexual orientation." And just last week, he left us once again with our marching orders in a New York Times op-ed written to be printed on the day of his funeral. "Though I may not be here with you, I urge you to answer the highest calling of your heart and stand up for what you truly believe. In my life, I have done all I can to demonstrate that the way of peace, the way of love and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it's your turn to let freedom ring." 55 years ago, on these very steps, our ancestors spoke to us about a dream. I'm looking at the engraving on the ground as I speak. And about 5 years after the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom, Dr. Martin Luther King ignited an engaged crowd in Memphis, Tennessee on April 3rd, 1968 during the sanitation workers' strike. We've got some difficult days ahead, but it really doesn't matter to me now. Because I've been to the mountaintop and I've seen the promised land. And I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. Dr. King was assassinated less than 24 hours later. So now here we are, August 6th, 2020, on the 50th anniversary of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the crown jewel policy of the civil rights movement, still staring down the same hate, the same injustices, the same inequities that our civil rights forefathers fought to eradicate. We did this already, y'all. We fought for these rights and won them already, and now we gotta go back out and fight for the same stuff all over again. I don't understand what's happening. But as I swirl inside this conflict, I'm reminded of the words of Frederick Douglass: "Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty." Voting is the people's voice. It's our power. And the Supreme Court's devastating decision in 2013 to gut the Voting Rights Act of its very heart has once again put our country in peril. The power of the Voting Rights Act was that discriminatory voting policies could be blocked before they harmed voters. Immediately after this reckless and naive Supreme Court decision, Republican lawmakers in Texas and North Carolina, 2 states previously covered by the law, moved to enact new voter ID laws and other restrictions that target communities of color who historically vote blue. With surgical precision, we have watched in horror the direct attacks upon people of color by this corrupt administration. There is a pandemic ravaging our nation and sovereign indigenous lands. Mass internment and expulsion of immigrants, challenges to LGBTQ plus rights, the erosion of environmental protections, the degradation of public trust in the media, the deepening the divide between what's real and what's fake, what's truth and what's deception and lies, limits upon women's reproductive health rights, attempts to cripple affordable health care, continued defunding of our public education system, shrinking collective bargaining, and a devastated system for public broadcast, the arts and humanities, and forever and always, the erosion and attack on our voting rights. We, the people, desperately need to come together to challenge the systemic breakdowns that have propelled us to this tipping point with unwavering resolve. Malcolm Gladwell's debut book, The Tipping Point, How Little Things Can Make a Big Difference, first published in 2000, defines a tipping point as the moment of critical mass, the threshold, the boiling point. The book seeks to explain and describe the mysterious sociological changes that mark everyday life. As Gladwell states, ideas and products and messages and behaviors spread like viruses do. Epidemics are sensitive to the conditions and circumstances of the times and places in which they occur. I've been asked today to speak to you all about America's future, but I can't see past the smoke as our cities literally smolder while our shameless leadership continues to fail us. Not only is there a lack of a national strategy 6 months into this COVID-19 pandemic with over 155,000 lives lost, we also have an economy that's on the brink of depression. The slowing down of our postal system so as to silence communities of color in making sure that disenfranchised communities who need to vote by mail to simply stay alive will not be counted. And most recently, this surreal dystopian invasion of the body snatchers, misuse of military resources that has finally pushed me to my breaking point. As I watched the news last week and learned of this administration's latest attacks on its own people by sending unidentified stormtroopers into sanctuary cities to snatch up peaceful protesters and throw them in unmarked vans with no formal charges, I finally allowed myself to say the words that I refused to feel or say these last 3.5+ years of government-sanctioned lawlessness. I am scared. I am terrified. And you should be too. I am also enraged that so many people in power, particularly white people, who could have stopped this monster and protected the American people, chose to say and do nothing. And why, do you ask, did these honorable people choose to do nothing? Because their privilege allowed them to do so. Anybody who still claims to not understand what white privilege means can look no further than the White House, the Senate, the cabinet. I can go on. White privilege is Special Counsel Mueller's anemic findings with his investigation into collusion, or the 2.5 years that General Mattis stayed silent about the mess he witnessed in the White House after resigning as Secretary of Defense, or the countless GOP senators who fell lockstep in line and have co-signed on all of the unprecedented and unethical decisions heaved upon the American people. I'll even venture to go all the way back to October 2016 when former director of the FBI, James Comey's last-minute reopening of the Clinton email scandal. The white man can grab him by the pussy and get elected to the highest office in the land. But her emails, the hypocrisy is staggering. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. White privilege is living in this moment and knowing that if any of these unprecedented and unethical acts had been committed by the black president or a woman president, these same white privileged men in power would have found a way to remove him or her from office without pause. Unprecedented and unethical, but not illegal. Just so we're clear, the definition and personification of white privilege is this president and the racist, white supremacist, xenophobic, autocratic cancer he embodies that has been allowed to metastasize all over the American people and thereby the entire world with no accountability or consequence. Evil prevails when good men do nothing. Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty. There's no doubt in my mind that we as a nation are at the tipping point, a reckoning, one that has been heating towards boiling over for hundreds of years. Our basic human rights, our black bodies, have been used as pawns for political gain since the Middle Passage. The American democratic experiment is failing. We are not, nor have we ever been, better than this. We have tried. Progress has been made. But as we can see, centuries of progress can be rolled back and snuffed out by white, hypocritical men who fear they are losing their power. When white men get scared, wars happen. Let me say that again. When white men fear losing power, they will stop at nothing to keep it, including blowing up the entire world. Do not be hoodwinked or bamboozled. What is happening in this country right now is calculated and on purpose. It's un-American, and for anybody else, it would be called genocide and treason. The system is not broken. It's working exactly how it was intended to work from its inception. And with 50 million people on unemployment and growing, over 155,000 dead, to which the man in the White House shrugs his shoulders and says, it is what it is. We got civil unrest in the streets, and the economy is at its worst since the Great Depression. I ask you one simple question. Are you better off than you were before? It's time for America to have the honest and difficult conversations. It's time we own our past so as to heal our present and nurture our future. It's time we elect a new kind of leadership to save our future, one that is rooted in love, humanity, compassion, empathy, freedom, and justice for all. It is time that we create ourselves anew, that we write a new story and fashion ourselves in new garments made of truth, repair, and transformation. One of my favorite Bible verses is from 1 Timothy 1:7. For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. So as we move forward in our power, love, and sound minds, it looks like we have two clear choices in November. Vote this fascist and all of his cronies down ballot out of office. Reset and begin the American democratic experiment again at zero, or not. Those are our choices. And I am not being hyperbolic when I say that this is the most important election of our lifetime. I don't care what you do or how you do it. Vote. People laid down their lives so we could exercise this right. Vote. I know they're coming for us with this suppression mess. Ain't nothing new. It's all good. Vote. Show up and participate in our democracy now, because if you don't, this may be the last time. Vote. Democracy is on the ballot. White supremacy, homophobia, women's rights, trans rights, Muslim rights, Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, all human rights, everything we hold dear are on the ballot this November. And I ask you, America, are we better than this? My faith and my hope tell me, yes, we are. We must stay the course. We must never give up. We must continue to get in good trouble, necessary trouble, because love trumps hate. It's time once again for change, and this time, change for good. God bless you all, and God bless these United States of America.